They called it a relic before it ever fired. High Strategos Vaeltir watched the human vessel drift at the edge of Council space, alone against a formation of 10,000 hulls. It was massive, yes, but mass without elegance meant nothing. Its armor was thick to the point of absurdity, its silhouette blunt, its thermal signature inefficient. Primitive. Confirm identification, Vaeltir said, already bored. Confirmed, an aide replied. Single human battleship, no escort, no active fleet elements within 3 light hours. A ripple of amusement moved through the command tier. Humanity's records were thin and old, brief flares of violence followed by long silence. Their wars were crude. Their ships relied on armor and kinetics, technologies abandoned once the Council mastered energy projection and field supremacy. Extinct, if not officially declared. Open standard channel, Vaeltir ordered. Let them know they've drifted into controlled space. The human ship did not maneuver, it did not accelerate or retreat. It held position at 180,000 kilometers, engines cold, weapons unlit. A voice answered. Calm. Human. This is United. Human Polity Battleship Resolute. You are operating within a restricted engagement zone. Transmit Command Authority identifiers. Vaeltir allowed himself a thin smile. They still use named hulls. He gestured for response. Human vessel, you are in violation of Council sovereign territory. Power down and prepare for inspection. There was a pause, not hesitation, calculation. Negative, the human voice replied. This system is under human protection. You are advised to withdraw. Laughter broke containment across the bridge. Stand alone. Stinger, a relic giving orders. Vaeltir reviewed the battleship's telemetry with academic interest. Armor mass exceeded Council cruisers by a factor of 4. Power output was uneven, no visible field harmonics. Its weapons ports were sealed, old-style mechanical shutters instead of adaptive apertures. Mark it as a curiosity, Vaeltir said. We'll process it after the excavation cycle. Beyond the human ship, Council operations continued uninterrupted. Drones descended toward the target site. Survey arrays unfolded. Ceremonial formations held, precise and untouchable. Time passed. The human ship did not move. At T+12 minutes, it transmitted again. Cease all operations. Evacuation corridors will be provided. Vaeltir did not respond immediately. He let the silence stretch, reinforcing hierarchy through neglect. When he finally spoke, his tone was instructional. Humanity is no longer a recognized military power. Your presence is noted and dismissed. Vacate or be removed. Another pause. Shorter this time. Corridors will remain open for 90 minutes, the human said. After that, escalation will occur. Stand alone, Stinger. They spoke like survival was guaranteed. Vaeltir muted the channel. Log their threat, he said. Add it to extinction folklore. The bridge settled back into routine. 10,000 ships maintained formation. Energy capacitors charged in background cycles. There was no urgency. A lone battleship, no matter how stubborn, could not challenge the architecture of Council war. Vaeltir looked once more at the human hull, dark and motionless against the stars, and dismissed it from his thoughts entirely. Authority did not yield to ghosts, and ghosts did not dictate terms. Authority had never negotiated from a position of certainty. High Strategos Vaeltir remained standing as the human transmission. Returned, not sharper, not louder, but unchanged. The same calm cadence. The same refusal to perform submission. This is the United Human Polity, the voice said. Cease all operations immediately. Evacuation corridors are now active. You have 90 minutes to comply. The bridge reacted with quiet disdain. Legal. Aides brought precedent glyphs onto Vaeltir's display before he asked. This sector had been catalogued, claimed, and taxed before humanity's last confirmed fleet action. No human polity existed in standing Council law. They were artifacts, with opinions. Vaeltir let the channel remain open. Human vessel, he replied. You are not recognized as a sovereign military authority. This operation proceeds under Council charter. Withdraw. The reply came after exactly 3 seconds. Negative. Excavation will compromise a protected site. Non-combatant corridors are marked now. They will remain stable for 90 minutes. Navigation overlays bloomed across Council tactical space without permission. 6 wide arcs, cleanly plotted, generous to the point of insult. They led away from the operation zone, threading safe vectors through gravitational shear and debris fields the Council had not yet mapped. An aide scoffed. They presume compliance. Vialtir studied the corridors anyway. The math was solid, conservative margins. No traps, that irritated him. On what authority do you issue these orders? He asked. On responsibility, the human answered. And on consequence. Standalone stinger. They mistook certainty for weakness. Vialtir muted the channel and turned to the legal cadre. Cite precedent. Council Directive 17, an aide replied immediately. Abandoned species claims are void after 2 centuries. Humanity exceeds threshold by 412 years. Satisfied, Vialtir reopened the channel. Your claim is invalid. Your warning is logged and dismissed. The human did not argue. Corridors will remain open, the voice said. Weapons activation after closure will be treated as hostile intent. No threat, no heat, just conditional. Framing like a safety notice. The bridge timer began counting down on its own initiative. 91 minutes, stark and unnecessary. Vialtir let it run. Ignoring it felt appropriate. Council operations continued. Drones cut deeper. Survey ships adjusted orbits. Formation discipline held across 10,000 hulls. Energy fields shimmering with controlled power. The human battleship remained motionless at 180,000 kilometers. Engines dark. At 60 minutes, the human spoke again. 30 minutes remaining. No response. At 30 minutes, evacuation corridors remained open. Not a single Council ship altered course. Compliance would have implied equivalence. At 10 minutes, the voice returned once more, identical in tone. Final notice. Standalone stinger. They offered mercy before dominance. Vialtir authorized escalation readiness, not fire. Council law required sequence, warnings exchanged, refusal recorded, authority preserved. The countdown reached 0. The corridors vanished. From the lattice, cleanly and without distortion, as if they had never existed. Vialtir exhaled, satisfied. Log non-compliance. Prepare corrective action. Far across the void, the human battleship adjusted orientation by fractions of a degree, and the range markers, unnoticed at first, began to close. The demonstration was meant to be instructive. Time. Strategos Vialtir authorized controlled fire, not annihilation. Council doctrine favored clarity. A single example, properly delivered, prevented escalation and preserved hierarchy. The human battleship remained alone at 180,000 kilometers, an ideal subject. Primary batteries, Vialtir said. Calibrated yield. Disable, do not destroy. Energy lances aligned across the formation. Coherent beams, phased plasma, gravitic, shear, systems refined over centuries to bypass armor by making armor irrelevant. Range, 176,000 kilometers. Duration, 14 seconds. Projected survival, 0. Fire. Light crossed the void in disciplined convergence. The human hull vanished behind. Saturation glare. Radiation counters spiked. Thermal bloom washed across Council sensors, clean and absolute. For 1 second, the bridge waited. Then the glare faded. The human battleship was still there. Its silhouette was scorched. Yes, surface plating glowing dull orange where energy had struck, but it remained intact, on vector, engine steady. No fragmentation, no spin, no loss of power. A sensor officer leaned closer to his console. Rerunning impact analysis. Numbers replaced expectation. Energy absorption. Anomalous, he said. 91% redirected. Secondary. Bleed through dissipated via hull mass. Another console chimed. Structural damage under 0.6%. No internal breaches detected. Silence spread across the bridge. Vialtir stepped forward. Repeat fire. Increase yield. The second volley doubled output and shifted frequency. the kind of fire that collapsed orbital stations and peeled moons. Again, the human hull flared. Again, it held. Updated metrics cascaded in. Absorption efficiency, 92.4%. Thermal spike duration, 0.8 seconds. Crew casualties, none detected. Standalone stinger, it didn't go through. They're not deflecting, an analyst said, voice tight. They're taking it. Vialtier felt the first edge of something unfamiliar, uncertainty not rooted in ignorance, but contradiction. Council ships relied on fields that avoided contact. Humans had built ships that invited it, armor, layered and sacrificial. Heat sinks buried deep. Mass used as solution, not liability. Cease fire, Vialtier ordered. The guns fell silent. The human battleship did not respond. It did not return fire. It did not retreat. It remained, patient, as if the exchange had been expected and logged. A transmission cut through the quiet. Energy weapons ineffective at current range. The sea, human voice said. Recommend disengagement. No triumph, no insult, just data. Standalone stinger, they had already done the math. Council observers scrambled through archival layers, pulling long-dismissed human doctrines into the light, references to ablative. Armor, redundant hulls, survivability margins measured in hits, not probabilities. Vialtier watched the range markers tick down almost imperceptibly. 80,000 kilometers. 78,500, London 76, Sino 900. The human ship was accelerating, not dramatically, not yet, but enough to register intent. The demonstration had failed. Worse, it had revealed something the Council had not accounted for. A war philosophy that assumed being hit was inevitable and built accordingly. Vialtier straightened, composure returning by force of habit. Update all batteries, he said. Prepare for maneuver engagement. Across the void, the human battleship continued forward, scarred but unbroken, as the distance between certainty and error began to collapse. Distance had always been authority's shield. High Strategos Vialtier watched the tactical plot stabilize after the failed demonstration, expecting the familiar reassertion of control. Energy weapons had not worked as intended, but doctrine allowed adjustment. Range still favored the Council, time still belonged to them. Then the human ship changed its thrust profile. Acceleration spike detected, a navigator reported. Human vessel increasing velocity. Vialtier did not look away, not look. In magnitude, a pause. 6G sustained, murmurs spread, quickly suppressed. 6G was extreme but survivable for short bursts. Vialtier allowed himself a breath. Correction, the navigator said. 9G. No, 12G and holding. The Sug. Bridge went still. Council inertial compensation failed beyond 4G for extended durations. Hull stress limits followed shortly after. No known capital vessel sustained double-digit acceleration without structural loss or crew incapacitation. The human battleship did not slow. Range collapsed visibly now. 6,000 kilometers. C2000, Quant 148,000. They're maneuvering under thrust, an analyst said, disbelief sharpening his voice. Vector changes at full acceleration. The human ship rolled, not violently but decisively, altering approach angle by degrees that rewrote every Council firing solution. It was not charging straight in. It was shaping space, turning velocity into terrain. Vialtier snapped orders. Adjust formations. Expand lateral spacing. Council ships obeyed, elegant lines stretching wider to preserve firing envelopes. The E-port response only made the problem worse. The human vessel exploited the gaps immediately, slipping through predictive shadows where targeting lagged by fractions of a second. At 120,000 kilometers, the battleship split thrust, sliding off axis while maintaining forward momentum. It was flying like a smaller craft, ignoring mass with brute engineering and crew tolerance the Council had never valued. Structural stress readings? Vialtier demanded. Human hull within tolerance, the navigator replied. Crew survivability? Unknown, another officer interjected. No signs of degradation. Acceleration remains stable. Standalone stinger. They leaned into the burn. Council formations began to lose coherence, not from enemy fire, but from physics. Some ships lagged as captains throttled down to spare crews. Others overshot alignment, inertial compensators straining. Command synchronization fractured as reaction times diverged. Human telemetry showed none of it. The battleship's thrust burns were short and brutal, precisely timed. It bled speed only to redirect it, shaving kilometers with each maneuver. The effect was relentless. Range dropped to 80,000 kilometers in under 2 minutes. Vialtier ordered gravitic interference fields activated. Space warping distortions designed to shove intruders off vector. The fields rippled outward, bending approach paths into lethal arcs. The human ship wavered, then corrected. Counter-thrust flared. Momentum answered distortion. The battleship rode through the warped space as if it had trained for exactly this. Stand alone. Stinger. Physics did not scare them. At 50,000 kilometers, Council point defense engagement windows collapsed. Firing solutions updated too slowly. The human ship was no longer approaching. It was inside the problem space. Vialtier felt doctrine give way beneath him, not with collapse, but with obsolescence. Everything the Council knew assumed opponents, who feared being hit, who traded speed for safety, who valued elegance over endurance. The human battleship valued closing. At 30,000 kilometers, it leveled its vector and held acceleration steady. A final controlled burn that erased the last illusion of distance as protection. Vialtier watched the plot lock into a new geometry and understood what the numbers now made unavoidable. The human ship had not rushed the engagement. It had arrived exactly when it intended to. Command failed by arithmetic, not fury. At 28,000 kilometers, the human battleship stopped accelerating. Not from strain, from completion. Its velocity flattened into a stable vector, perfectly aligned with the densest node of Council command traffic. High Strategos Vialtier felt it before the sensors confirmed it, the moment when an opponent finished maneuvering and began execution, new. Emissions, a weapons officer said. Strong magnetic flux along the human hull. Vialtier recognized the signature from dismissed archives, linear accelerators, mass drivers, railguns. The first salvo launched without spectacle. No warning. Flare, no energy bloom. Just velocity, range, 27,400 kilometers. Time to impact, 2.1 seconds. Council point defense reacted instantly, saturating space with intercept fire calibrated for missiles and energy constructs. It was irrelevant. The slugs did not evade. They did not need to. They punched through defensive fields and hull plating alike, each strike delivering kinetic force measured in catastrophic certainty. The forward command cruiser vanished in 3 impacts, bridge section, reactor spine, aft control, sequenced so tightly they read as one event. Standalone Stinger, they counted the hits. Missiles followed, not as a swarm, but as a ledger. 12 launches from the battleship's forward bays, spaced at fixed intervals. Drives burned cold, guidance was inertial, jamming failed by design. Intercept probability dropping, a controller said. 30%, 22, now 12. Explosions rippled across the command lattice. Communications vessels went dark first, sensor coordinators next. Ships carrying authority tags disappeared in clean succession, not randomly, but hierarchically. Vialtier watched the tactical plot hollow out from the center. Flagship losses, 3 time. Elapsed, 41 seconds. Council fire returned in volume, but without coherence. Energy lances cut empty space where the human ship had been fractions of seconds earlier. The battleship adjusted by meters, not kilometers, maintaining its firing solution with brutal patience. The second railgun cycle fired. Impact cadence, 1. Strike every 0.5 seconds. Range, 24,000 kilometers. Hull fragments replaced icons. Orders failed to propagate. Doctrine required confirmation that no longer existed. Then the nuclear markers appeared. They were not planet breakers, not weapons of terror. They were compact, shaped, and few. 6 warheads maneuvering into precise detonation points among clustered command ships. When they went off, the effect was surgical. Hard radiation and electromagnetic collapse confined to calculated volumes. Entire command clusters went dead without touching ships beyond their envelopes. Standalone Stinger. Even their nukes had limits. 7. Command vessels were erased in under 3 minutes. Not the largest hulls. Not the most heavily armed. The ones that mattered. Authority evaporated faster than crews could comprehend why orders no longer arrived. Vile-Tier felt the shift as procedure failed. Without verified command signals, Council law restricted autonomous escalation. Ships hesitated. Some attempted withdrawal. Others froze, waiting for instructions that would never come. The human battleship did not pursue fleeing vessels. Its fire tracked only those that powered weapons or attempted reorganization. Dominance expressed as selectivity. Updated projections scrolled across Vile-Tier's display. Council ships destroyed. 214 human ships lost. 0 human hull integrity. 99.2%. The numbers were not just bad. They were obscene. A human transmission cut through the wreckage field. Command elements neutralized, the voice said. All remaining vessels, power down weapons, and transmit surrender codes. No triumph, no threat. Just the next instruction. Vile-Tier understood then that this was not a battle meant to be won emotionally. It was an equation brought to balance. Humans did not overwhelm. They subtracted, deliberately, until resistance equaled 0, and then they stopped. The battle space went quiet, not because nothing remained, but because nothing was allowed to escalate further. The human battleship held position amid drifting. Debris, guns trained but idle. Having completed the count it had come to perform, the guns stayed silent. After the last command vessel broke apart and drifted, after radiation counters stabilized and debris vectors resolved, nothing followed. No pursuit, no finishing fire. The human battleship held position at 20,000 kilometers, weapons powered but idle. Its presence a constant weight on every remaining Council hull. High Strategos Vile-Tier remained on the bridge, emergency lighting casting long shadows over officers, who no longer waited for orders. Authority had failed, but life support still functioned. That alone unsettled them. A system-wide transmission opened without intrusion or force. This is the united human polity, the voice said, unchanged, even now. All Council vessels are ordered to power down primary and secondary weapons. Compliance will be met with protection. Non-compliance will be met with restraint, then force. No triumph, no anger. Just sequence. Across the tactical plot, status lights began to shift. One ship powered down, then another, then a dozen. A handful attempted to realign weapons. Targeting locks followed them immediately, steady and unblinking, until their systems went dark. Then the second message followed. By human law, the voice continued, slavery is a crime. All bonded labor, coerced auxiliaries, and involuntary combat crews are to be identified. Extraction and medical teams are deploying now. Confusion rippled through the surviving fleet. Council doctrine did not classify bonded service as slavery. It classified it as optimization. By human law, the voice said, surrendered combatants will not be executed. They will be detained, treated, and tried as individuals. Guilt is personal. Survival is not conditional. Standalone Stinger. They stopped firing to explain. Human craft moved at last, not aggressively, but deliberately. Boarding shuttles launched in measured numbers, vectors wide and non-threatening. Hull markings pulsed with standardized identifiers, repeating across every channel. Medical signatures followed close behind. Council crews waited for retribution that did not arrive. Docking clamps engaged, atmospheres equalized. Human boarding teams crossed thresholds with weapons slung low, visors raised, movements controlled and precise. Numbers streamed openly, as if meant to be witnessed. Detention capacity prepared, 1.2 million. Medical units deployed. 380 taunt evacuation corridors reopened. 6 Vile-Tier watched bonded laborers escorted from sealed compartments they had never expected to leave alive. Watched injured officers receive treatment without interrogation. watched human recorders log names, ranks, and actions instead of kill tallies. This was not mercy as spectacle. Stand-alone stinger. They called it law. A final clause followed, quieter, heavier. Attempts to self-destruct vessels, erase crews, or destroy evidence will be treated as crimes against sentient life. Preservation is mandatory. Vaeltir understood then that annihilation had never been the objective. Control had been. And once control was absolute, killing became unnecessary. Human battleship maintained position, a fixed point around which order replaced chaos. Trials would come later. Slowly, publicly, with outcomes that could not be negotiated. For the first time since he had taken command, Vaeltir felt certainty fail completely, not replaced by fear, but by something colder. The realization that the enemy had never come to destroy the Council. They had come to make it answerable. The observers broke cover once the firing stopped. Coalition vessels had been present from the beginning, far beyond optimal engagement range, tucked into cold orbits where passive arrays could watch without being seen. Neutral by charter, silent by survival. Now their channels opened across the system, not with condemnation or praise, but with confirmation. "We are releasing corroborated records," the coalition envoy said, human activity predating this engagement by centuries. Vaeltir listened from a damaged command deck, restrained but conscious, as data displaced assumption. The human battleship had not arrived blindly. Coalition archives unfolded in layers. Long baseline sensor nodes placed 318 years earlier along rimward vectors. Automated listening posts tuned to a narrow band of space-time distortion. Deep observatories seeded in systems with no economic value and no political interest. All keyed to the same signature. "This battle space," the envoy continued, "matches 31 prior human watch zones. Each corresponds to historic disappearance. Events, entire fleets lost, systems sterilized, no debris. Extermination's Council records listed those zones as anomalies. Humanity had classified them as threats. Standalone stinger, they didn't vanish. They watched. The observers overlaid reconstructions, ghost images of gates, ruptures, forced apertures in space, matching the excavation site the Council had dismissed as inert. The geometry was identical. Collapse vectors too precise to be natural. Someone had closed those doors from the inside. Human doctrine files followed, and not propaganda. Manuals, ship designs iterated across generations, each heavier, less elegant, more survivable. Armor layered for repeat impact. Systems redundant past efficiency. Crews trained for sustained acceleration, command loss, isolation, and attrition. They assumed, the envoy said carefully, that when contact resumed, authority would not believe them. Vaeltir felt the sentence settle. It explained the tone, the patience, the numbers ready before the first shot was fired. Humanity had rehearsed disbelief. Coalition analysts continued, voices steady as projections turned grim. Based on recovered. Exterminator-level entities operated on cycles, probing, retreating, returning with escalation. Humanity's absence aligned perfectly with a long-term preparation phase. They withdrew to build depth, the envoy said. Not fleets for show, systems for survival. Standalone stinger, mockery was anticipated. The human battleship was not a relic. It was a test article, one node in a layered response humanity had never advertised because advertisement invited attention. Coalition sensors updated again. New data points populated the rimward plots, faint, distant, familiar, the same signature. This engagement, the envoy concluded, matches projected human doctrine for first contact denial under exterminator risk. It was not designed to win political standing, a pause. It was designed to keep the door closed. Silence followed. Not shock, but comprehension arriving too late to be useful. Vaeltir understood then the final insult buried in the Council's defeat. Humanity had not fought to prove superiority. They had fought to confirm readiness. And beyond, the rim, something ancient and methodical was moving again, exactly as the humans had prepared for all along. Dominance did not surge. It advanced. With command authority erased, The Council fleet fractured along predictable lines within 4 minutes. 31% powered down immediately. 46% attempted withdrawal on independent vectors. The remainder hesitated, doctrine-bound, waiting for confirmation that would never come. Human clocks did not pause for indecision. At T plus 0000, synchronized markers appeared across the battle space. Not warnings. Triggers. The human battleship remained central, immobile now, its role complete. Around it, smaller human craft detached in numbered elements, Group 1 through Group 48, each assigned a bounded volume and a finite task. No pursuit. Arcs crossed. No two groups overlapped. Space was partitioned and processed, missiles launched first, not at ships, but at geometry. Detonations blossomed into patterned radiation curtains, shaping corridors of denial that redirected fleeing vessels, without striking them. Drives flared as captains tried to break free, only to find vectors pinched and folded back toward controlled space. Range control, enforced without contact. At T plus 0130, boarding operations began. Cutters latched onto immobilized hulls 8 at a time, identical angles, identical breach points. Internal resistance collapsed quickly, not from overwhelming force, but from certainty. Where crews complied, weapons stayed slung. Where they didn't, stunfire followed, brief and contained. Secured vessels' counter ticked upward in real time. First, 5 minutes, 438 ships. Human casualties, 0 standalone Stinger. They ran the war like logistics. At T plus 0410, a knot of Council destroyers attempted mutual defense, powering weapons in concert to reassert a firing envelope. Human response was immediate and limited. Railgun fire disabled drives only, no reactor strikes, no follow-on. The knot unraveled in 30 seconds. Surrender signals spiked across every band, chaotic at first, then coherent as translation packets, propagated. Humans responded to each with the same acknowledgement code, the same instructions, the same promise of protection upon compliance. Consistency taught faster than fear. By minute 10, resistance collapsed into pattern. Ships that had planned to fight watched neighbors survive by standing down. Crews powered weapons off before human targeting settled. Some broadcast surrender twice, uncertain the first would be believed. Human ships answered everyone. Stand-alone Stinger. Compliance spread faster than panic. At T plus 12 ANS, nuclear options reappeared. Not as strikes, but as visible geometry. 6 warheads slid into holding orbits near 2 carrier clusters, still attempting reorganization. No detonation followed. The implication was sufficient. Both clusters powered down within 30 seconds. Quantified restraint. Boarding operations accelerated. Human teams catalogued crews, separated bonded labor from command staff, and sealed data cores against tampering. 12 self-destruct attempts were intercepted before threshold initiation. None succeeded. The counters kept climbing. Council vessels destroyed in this phase. 219. Council vessels captured or immobilized. 102. Council vessels escaped interdiction. 19. Human losses remained unchanged. From confinement, Vailtier watched the numbers finalize with a strategist's unwilling respect. The Council had believed supremacy meant endurance, outlasting opposition until resistance became irrational. Humanity had redefined it as control over outcomes, applied until choice collapsed into compliance. At T plus 21 Zhuangs, the human fleet reformed, not to pursue, but to contain. Perimeter rings locked into place around surrendered ships and debris alike. No hull drifted untracked. No signal went unanswered. A final broadcast followed, brief and procedural. All remaining Council vessels, the human voice said. This engagement phase is complete. No further fire will be initiated unless compliance is broken. Medical, legal, and recovery operations are now primary. Primary. War demoted by schedule. The last surrender came at T plus 2740, a lone cruiser that had fled on minimal power, engines burning cold. Human interceptors flanked it without firing, matched velocity, and waited. After 4 minutes, the cruiser powered down. The count closed. Human crews did not celebrate. They adjusted orbits, logged fuel expenditure, reassigned boarding rotations, and rotated medical teams forward. Dominance, once achieved, was treated as a condition to maintain, not a moment to savor. As debris cooled and surrender beacons stabilized, the system settled into a new equilibrium, one enforced not by threat alone, but by relentless follow-through. The human fleet held steady, patient and exact, having dismantled a force 10,000 strong without ever breaking cadence. Authority collapsed without announcement. Human detention hubs came online within 6 hours, modular, standardized, and visible to every coalition observer. Their layouts were published openly, capacities declared in advance. Nothing was hidden behind classification. Every surrendered crew member was logged by name, species, rank, and function. Medical triage preceded questioning. Nutrition followed treatment. Restraints were present, visible, and temporary. High Strategos Veiltir was transferred under guard that did not rush him. His injuries were treated before he was asked to speak. "You are not a prisoner of war," the human officer told him. Voice, even. "You are a defendant," the distinction propagated faster than panic. Across the captured fleet, bonded laborers were separated from command staff and informed, clearly repeatedly, that compliance would not return them to confinement. They were given options, not orders. Remain aboard under protection, or evacuate immediately. Within 12 hours, 83% chose evacuation. Transports ran on continuous rotation. Evacuees processed, 1.4 million fatalities during transfer, 0 standalone. Stinger. They lived through surrender. Council doctrine had never accounted for this outcome. Authority relied on inevitability, on the belief that resistance only increased suffering. Human process demonstrated the opposite. Survival followed compliance. Accountability followed command. Trials were announced without dates. Evidence preservation. Orders followed immediately. Human legal frameworks propagated across open networks, translated into coalition standard syntax. Crimes were named precisely. Slavery, extermination doctrine. Command negligence resulting in civilian death. Penalties were bounded. Rights were explicit. No exception clauses appeared. Council captains began defecting within 48 hours. At first it was individual hulls, ships whose home systems lay far from the Council Corps, whose loyalty had always been transactional. They petitioned for provisional jurisdiction under human law, offering data cores, testimony and compliance in exchange for protection. Humans accepted conditionally. By day 3, entire member systems followed. Coalition channels filled with alignment declarations, not pledges of allegiance, but legal adoption. Anti-slavery statutes ratified, trial observers requested. Human advisors invited, not imposed. Standalone stinger, authority leaked away. Emergency council convocation was attempted. Attendance failed quorum. Without fleets, enforcement collapsed. Without enforcement, precedent dissolved into archive. Veiltir learned of the defections from an unfiltered feed. No one shielded him from it. Transparency, the humans called it. "You could have killed us," he said during his first deposition. The human recorder did not look up. "That would have ended the problem you recognized," she replied. "Not the one we're responsible for." Outside the detention ring, the system changed character. Wreckage was cleared deliberately. Captured ships were stabilized, not stripped. Refugees were routed toward coalition worlds that had already adopted human protections. Maps updated across shared networks, not with borders, but with legal overlays. Humanity did not claim territory, it claimed standards. By the end of the first week, council authority existed only as detained leadership and deprecated law. Power had moved, not through conquest, but through comparison under pressure. The galaxy had seen 2 systems side by side, and it was choosing the one that let people survive. The system entered a quieter phase, not peace, but control. Debris fields, thinned under measured burns. Stabilized hulls held assigned orbits. Human logistics ships moved with the same precision they had shown in battle, converting wreckage into catalogued mass and surrender into procedure. Nothing drifted unmanaged, nothing vanished unrecorded. The human battleship Resolute remained on station, engines cold, a fixed point around which the new order held. High Strategos Veiltir observed from detention as the excavation site was sealed, not destroyed, not buried, but enclosed within layered containment fields. The scarred structure beneath remained intact. The warning etched into fused alloy was left untouched. Preserved, logged, cross-referenced. 3 days after the last surrender, the alert arrived without ceremony. Long-range anomaly confirmation. A human sensor officer reported on an open channel. Cross-referencing legacy signatures. Coalition observers leaned forward, so did defected council analysts. Data unfolded cleanly, indifferent to who watched. Signal origin, outer rim distance, 41,800 AU and closing. Emission geometry, partial match. Arrays synchronized. Baselines tightened. Partial became complete. The signature aligned with archived. Disappearance events. Phase drift identical to forced collapse models. Energy asymmetry matching the sealed site below. The same silence around something massive enough to erase fleets without leaving debris. Stand alone, Stinger. The warning wasn't singular. Human listening posts responded first, not with alarm, but activation. Systems long dormant came fully awake. Deep-range trackers adjusted baselines across multiple sectors. Fleets that had not fired a shot in this engagement shifted posture, redistributing rather than massing. This contact, the human voice said evenly, matches exterminator class, movement patterns. Estimated arrival window, 94 days. No one asked how humanity knew what to call it. Coalition envoys exchanged looks that required no translation. Council survivors felt the implications settle heavier than defeat. The sealed structure had not been a weapon, it had been a door held shut. Stand alone, Stinger! This time the signal was answered. Humanity did not declare emergency rule. It did not demand allegiance or issue ultimatums. Instead, it released the data, raw, complete, sufficient for any polity to understand what approached and what preparation would require. Defected systems reaffirmed legal alignment within the hour. Evacuation models updated across shared networks. Defense corridors expanded beyond a single system. Human fleets layered into depth, not spectacle, overlapping coverage, redundancy over display. Veiltir understood then the final meaning of the battle he had lost. The human battleship had not been the threat. It had been the proof. As containment fields dimmed over the sealed ruin and long-range plots filled with new vectors, the galaxy crossed a threshold it could not retreat from. Extinction threats were no longer rumor. Survival was no longer delegated to authority alone. Far beyond the rim, the same signature advanced, steady and precise. And this time, the door was guarded.